There are moments when, even with the right words, nothing seems to be enough. You argue, you explain, you present logic, you lay out the facts, and still, you are not taken seriously. A quiet kind of exhaustion begins to settle in when you feel the need to justify every choice, every boundary, every decision. And deep down, something starts to ache. The sense that no matter how correct your argument is, it does not generate respect. This happens because there is a subtle difference between clarity and the need for acceptance. True communication is born from firmness, but when that communication carries anxiety for approval, it loses strength. The more you try to convince someone of something that is already clear to you, the more you hand over the power to validate what should have already been decided within yourself. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He did not write to convince others. He wrote to align himself. He did not justify every imperial decision. He simply upheld it, and by doing so, he built authority without needing to constantly assert it. Epictetus went even further. He taught that whoever depends on the approval of others gives away their own center. Because in trying to please, we surrender our emotional freedom. This reflection begins at that point. It is not about communication. It is about identity, about stopping the need to convince and starting to sustain. Authority is not imposed, it is built. And it begins when you decide not to negotiate who you are, even when others do not understand. At first glance, it may look like dialogue, but often, excessive explanations hide a deep fear of being misunderstood, rejected, or dismissed. Constant self-justification creates the illusion of clarity, but underneath, there is a persistent need to be accepted. To avoid the discomfort that disagreement can bring, the mechanism is subtle. The mind uses rationality as a shield. It presents arguments, logic, examples. But deep down, it is not trying to clarify. It is trying to be validated. It is asking for emotional permission to exist in that way. And the more that permission is denied, the more explanations appear. The more explanations appear, the more exhaustion grows. Marcus Aurelius did not write to be read. He wrote to stay centered. His notes were private, intimate alignments between himself and his principles. There was no attempt to persuade, only the continuous effort not to lose himself. That is a powerful lesson. When explanation is born from the desire to align inwardly, it is strength. When it is born from fear of rejection, it is escape. You have probably lived through this. You explain, you argue, you open your heart, and still, the other person returns to the same point. At that moment, something needs to shift, and it is not the other person. It is your choice to stop where the decision is already clear, to reduce explanations to what is essential, to close the conversation with dignity, not out of contempt, but out of self-respect. Over time, this changes how people listen to you. Fewer words, more silence filled with clarity. And respect begins to arise not because of what you said, but because of how firmly you remained where you already stood. There is a widespread idea that authority is earned by convincing difficult people, as if respect depends on winning debates, as if the value of a position lies in how many people accept it. But that is an illusion. True respect does not come from agreement, it comes from consistency. The mistake many repeat for years is trying to gain respect, when respect is not gained, it is sustained. It is sustained when others realize you do not change your position every time you are tested, that you do not fall apart with every criticism, that you do not feel the need to defend yourself against every attack, because your strength is already within you, not in the other person's response. Epictetus said that freedom is acting according to your principles, not according to the reactions of others. This means your firmness begins before you speak. It begins in the quiet decision about where you will stand, And when that decision comes from within, no argument can truly shake it, even if they try, even if they pressure you, even if they disagree. In daily life, this shows up in simple gestures. A person who, even when provoked, maintains their position calmly, who does not feel the need to repeat the same explanation, who does not enter the game of emotional persuasion, because for them, the center has already been chosen. That is why the strongest repositioning is internal. Decide before you speak. Sustain before you explain. And you will notice something remarkable. People stop testing you when they sense there is no longer room for emotional negotiation. Silent firmness begins to speak on your behalf. Trying to convince others may seem like a sign of skilled communication, but in truth, it is one of the most exhausting habits a person can maintain. Because in constantly trying to persuade, you end up begging for something that should naturally emanate: respect. Marcus Aurelius embodied this. His authority did not come from passionate speeches or from needing to be understood by everyone. It came from lived coherence, consistency of principles, and the ability to sustain without over-explaining. He was followed not because he convinced, but because he remained steady. Epictetus reinforced the same idea. Autonomy begins when you free yourself from the expectation of being accepted. This does not mean indifference, it means wholeness. There is no greater strength than someone who, even when questioned, does not rush to justify themselves. Someone who reduces words and increases presence. Authority does not require agreement, it requires consistency. And consistency is rare. That is why it is so deeply respected. When you stop asking for emotional permission, you begin to occupy your place with dignity. And in that space, you no longer need to convince, because someone who is truly aligned inspires, without needing to explain.